Okay, so let's get started. Hey everyone, thank you guys so much for coming, really appreciate it. My name's Jasper and I'm on the education team at CSESoc. So today we're going to work through ExpressJS and MongoDB. So ExpressJS is just a way of building up an API, and MongoDB is just a database to store all that data from the API kind of thing. So we'll just go through a schedule. So firstly, we're going to talk about what are these strange words like MongoDB and ExpressJS and APIs. Then we'll go through building up an Express app and building in an Express router, and then using a REST client to interact with that Express app, and then finally connecting that to MongoDB. So Express. Express is kind of like a framework for a backend. A backend API we're going to use interchangeably. An API is just like a way of kind of formatting data to be retrieved from a server somewhere. So if we go to a web browser really quickly, and we open up, I think it's called catfact.ninja/fact, you can see we get back this. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but like some data from this website. And so this is an API, right? It's giving us back some JSON data. It's always going to be in the format of like fact, and then some string, and then length, and the length of that string. So we can try and build something similar to this, where if we always go to this catfact.ninja/fact, we'll get back some info in this format. And if we refresh it, then we'll get some other info. But this is like the basis of what an API is. And it's just a collection of routes, and if we add something onto the end of this route, maybe like ginger, then we might get facts about ginger cats. But like different routes within this kind of base one is going to give us different information. Hopefully that makes sense. And ExpressJS is just an easy way for us to structure our API and make it consistent and easy to build. So HTTP requests are what we're going to be making to this API. And depending on the type of request, we'll interact with the API differently. So with a GET request, we're going to ask for some data back. And so what we saw with catfact, that was a GET request, right? We're going to this URL and we're getting back some data, and then we get to see that data. A POST request is where we go to a URL and we also send some data. So we're adding something to that API that's getting processed and probably added into a database somewhere. And so that's always going to add data into the database. With a PUT request, that's instead going to update the data in the database. So we'll send some request, that's going to change, I don't know, like a cat fact might change the value of the fact, the length, but it won't add a new one in. And the delete request, obviously just going to delete something from the database. MongoDB, slightly different to ExpressJS, but it's just a database for storing a bunch of data at one point. And it's what's known as a document-oriented database, which just means everything's stored in kind of like JSON format. And you can kind of think of the structure of MongoDB as a house. So a cluster is the house, and so inside each house we have rooms, and each room is a database. And so then within each one of those rooms, we also have boxes, and that's called a collection. And inside that box is then like a sheet of paper, and that's a document. So that's like a piece of JSON, or as we saw with the catfact one, that would have been, I don't know, that block of data. So it's very structured and hierarchical. Excellent. Oh, there we go. Sorry? It's in JSON format, which is like JavaScript object. I can show you what JSON is, but it's just what we saw with the catfact. So it's like wrapped in these curly braces, and then you have a key fact, and then a value. So the value is this string, and then the key and the value. So you would have seen this as like React or any other kind of JavaScript. Excellent. Yeah, kind of similar to CSV. Yeah. Cool. So we just opened up an empty repository here. I'm just going to get started on building up our app from scratch. So open up terminal and type npm init, and this will initialize just some kind of like JavaScript project for us. We can use all the default names like Open Dev Workshop, it's a good one, version, normal, description, don't really need one. Entry point, index.js, always a good place to start, that's just kind of the default. Test command, git repo, don't really worry about this stuff, just anything works. And that's okay, excellent. So now we have our package.json. We're also going to want to add in an index.js. As we said, that's what our entry point is. So once we start this app, it's going to start by executing this index.js file. And to actually run our app, we're going to add something into script, and we'll add a run script. And that's just going to run node index.js. So it's just going to take that index file and just run it. Whatever happens, happens. Excellent. So now if we type npm run, oops, probably change that. Change it to dev instead, a little bit nicer. You can see npm run, it executes this Node.js and starts the app. Cool. So we're also going to need 2 more packages. So for today we're working with Express and MongoDB. So we'll go npm install Express, and wait for that to load, and then npm install MongoDB. And these are the only 2 ones that we'll need for today. Go into our index once that downloads. Can you guys all see the writing, by the way? All good? Anyone can't see it? No? Easy peasy. All right. Oops. So inside our index.js, we will go const express equals require express. This is going to import that package that we just downloaded, let us use it as an object. We're going to create an app just by calling that express object. And then finally, we're going to want to listen on that app. We're going to choose some random port, like 5000, and supply a callback to it, which just tell us server is running on port 5000. So here we've created an Express app, and we've told it to listen on the port 5000. So any requests that come into that port, it'll handle those and respond however it needs to. So now if we try running this again, npm run dev, then we get server is running on port 5000. So if I stop that just for a sec, and we go to localhost port 5000, we'll see, oopsies. We'll see there's nothing there. So the site can't be reached, refuse to connect, just nothing there. But if we start it again, npm run dev, and then we refresh that and try again, then we can see there's some kind of, there's some kind of response. So it just cannot get. But that's just the Express app telling us, haven't added a route in there yet, but we're listening on that port, we're waiting for incoming requests. So if we now try adding in some routes. Is everything making sense, by the way? All good? Any questions so far? Nope. Excellent. We'll add in a routes folder, and we'll add in stock.js. So the app we're going to build today is just going to keep track of some stock, I don't know, like vegetables or just things in a store, right? So inside our stock, we will create, we'll import Express again. And we'll create a stock router this time. Oopsies, sorry. Express.router. Now we're going to add a route to this router. We're just going to add it to the most basic URL. This is just a slash. So like when you go to any website and you just go to the slash, like google.com/whatever, that's just the most basic one, gives you back the default response. So for this response, we're just going to send back, this is the stock route. So inside each of these, like stockrouter.get, stockrouter.delete, stockrouter.post and put, that kind of thing, it's always going to take the first parameter as wherever the request is going to, and the second parameter will be a callback. That callback is going to take a request object and a response object. So the request object is going to have any parameters, which we'll get to later, or the response object will just be a way for us to send back a response. So we're going to call this response object's function send. That's going to send back, this is the stock route, back to whoever's requested it. Cool. So we'll go back up into our index, and we'll const stock router equals require stock router. I need to make sure to export this though, by the way. So when we're doing another kind of file like this, like a routes file, then we'll have to export the stock router by just going module.exports equals stock router. Excellent, it's back up in our index. We've imported this stock router. Now we need to connect it to our app somehow. So we'll go app.use/stock and stock router. So this app.use function is called middleware, and that's just a way for us to like add in some functionality between an incoming request and an outgoing request. So in this case, when we take in a request, which is to stock, we're going to connect the stock router to it. So when a request comes in, it's like localhost 5000 followed by stock. Then once we get that stock at the start, we'll pass it off to stock router, and whatever response comes back, we'll send that. Excellent. Cool. So if we try restarting our server, npm run dev again. Oh no. Module not found. Cannot find module stock router. How to structure the database? We'll get to that in just a sec, but it's just going to be in a JSON format similar to this. But instead it would be a list. So we can go db.json, and it might be a list of items like name, might be apple.
I mean, similar to other languages like in num, say start with category, type, category, color, quantity, name,
Yeah.
description, how the MongoDB in JavaScript to structure this before start after create DB.
So yeah, MongoDB is a little bit strange in being a document-oriented database, and it doesn't really expect any structure. So any structure to a document, you have to create yourself. So when you send in something, it's just expected to have like a name and a price and a category, but it won't expect that when it comes.
How to concatenate or merge the piece of paper in the box? Where is your piece of data in that little container of the house of the DB?
Isn't there how to like find?
Yeah, because the whole way for DB is create data and also quick way to search data, what you need, right? And the last is visualization to structure it in very condensed format to present what's in that house. You just keep going. I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Okay. We're good. So
my laptop is upgrading. I can't make any notes. Just ask it in case I forget.
Yeah, okay, all good. It's just in MongoDB, when you send something in like your document and it has a name and a price, it'll index that name and index that price so it can search through them quickly. So any fields that you pass, it'll read those and index based off that.
Okay.
Yep. Add in a few things. There we go, lovely. Now have a nice full database.json.
And how the indexing will collaborate with operating system, very low level system. Also have indexing. I'll do my own. You just continue. Sorry.
Okay. No, all good, all good. Questions are highly encouraged. Excellent. So we have this stock router that which is imported from from routes/stock, and we've run it again. It's saying server's running on port 5000. So we'll go back to our website and go to the stock route, and we get back. This is a stock route. So we can see we've got back some kind of response from our route here. This is the stock route. Excellent. And something that we want to keep consistent with most APIs is that you pass in JSON data and you return JSON data. So we'll add in one more piece of middleware where we go app.use express.json. I think that's how we do it. And then we restart that and refresh the page. Cool, and that gave back JSON data. Excellent. So this is make sure that when we send back objects later, then they'll be nicely formatted, easy to read, and like stringified properly. Cool. So now we'll look at adding in some variables to our route. So it's going to take in add and request response and some kind of response here. Okay. We also want to add in some kind of, just so we have a little bit more data to work with. We'll go db equals require ./db. So it's just going to pull in all that JSON data and let us use it as an object. Lovely. So now we want to return. We want to pass in a variable like name into our stock route. And we want to take in that variable, find where an item matches that name, and then return that back. So for item in DB, if DB dot I.name.
Is the indexing data, the name matches the requested.
Yeah.
What is the parameter setting here?
So here we've said that we're requesting a parameter name. So we have stock / something like Apple. And because we have a colon before it, then we've specified that we're requesting a variable. Yeah, exactly. So then we'll be able to find that variable in request.params.name. Cool. So in here we're going to loop through our database list. And so for index in database, if the database, the name is equal to the parameter that's been sent, then we'll respond with that object. And once we've found it, we just want to return, so we're not searching through the rest of it unnecessarily.
So it does not need to store in some variable for your search results. You can simply just print it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So MongoDB will be slightly different, but that's what we have for now. Oops. Soc/Apple, so if we search for Apple, we can see we get back name, Apple, and price 0.99. And if we check our database, and we find Apple in here somewhere, we can see that the price was correct, the name was correct, and everything else was correct. And you notice that this time it's a kind of black background with white writing, and that just tells us that it's not like normal text / HTML kind of format that's being given back. Now it's JSON. So we know that our middleware, this express.json bit, is working correctly. Excellent. So now we're going to work on trying to add things back into the database. So we're going to need to be able to read from a file and write to a file. So we'll import, sorry, I think I'll just check here. It's called, so we're const fs equals require fs / promises. It's just like the standard JavaScript way of like reading and writing to a file. We'll be able to add a stock router .post method this time. So this time we're going to request add item, and we'll pass it in a callback, request response. So again, this callback's going to be executed once we get some kind of post request in. Cool. So we're going to add to our request.body, then we're going to write the file and send it back. So what's happening here, we're adding onto the database. So again, database is just a list, pushing onto the end of it the request body, whatever's sent in the body, hopefully they've sent it in the format of like name and price. We're just pushing it onto the end of it, then we're writing it back to the file and returning that the item was added. Cool, so I want to test out our post route, but it's a little bit of a challenge because if you go into the browser, there's not really any way for you to add in a post body. So a post request is going to expect some headers and then a body, and the body is whatever you want to push into the database. But if it's just a URL, there's no way we can really type in, like, add in this item or add in somewhere else. So we're going to need something else called a REST client. So I use one called Advanced REST Client. Most of them will be pretty similar. They will kind of have this kind of format to it. Hopefully you guys can, is that not too small? That's all right. Excellent. So we're going to go to localhost 5000 and stock add item. Cool. And then we'll change it to a post. So you can see there's all these different types of like requests, but the main four are up top: get, post, put, and delete. This time we're going to do a post request, and you can see that this body kind of section just got added in. So we'll change this to JSON because you only receive JSON in our web server. And we're just going to pass in a name. And what's an item that we don't have? I mean, toothbrush. I don't think we have it in there. And a price. Maybe this is like $10.99 for a toothbrush. Cool. So we're going to send that. Oopsies, not ideal. Needed to run the web server. There we go. Now we've added in our post request. It should be okay now. Back to our REST client, and we'll post it again. And we get back that response, item added. Lovely. Now we have a look in our db.json file, and if we go right to the end, then we'll see we now have our toothbrush for $10.99 right there. Lovely. Cool, so hopefully that's making sense in the terms of like taking in, oops, sorry, we're back to stock. Yes, now I've looked at like a basic route just to the slash, very basic, slash stock. We return with something like this is the stock route. If we want to add in a more complex route, then we'll put a colon before the variable name. And so that means someone can pass in a variable name, we can process that, we can compare it to stuff currently in the database and return whenever it's relevant. Or we can add in a post route where we just want to add in an item. And again, with the post routes, you don't expect anything in the URL, you just want to expect some kind of body. And that body is going to be stored in request.body. So we've just pushed that request body up into the database, we've written it back to database.json, and then we send back a response saying item added. Lovely. So this is the start bit of our workshop. Hopefully it's all making sense. Anyone have any questions about any of that so far? All good? Okay, lovely. So I'll switch back to the slide for a sec. And for the next like 10, 20 minutes or so, just try and work on these. Oopsies, sorry, that's wrong. Lovely. For the next like 10 to 20 minutes, just try and work on these exercises, and see if you can get a REST client installed, adding a put request to update the data, so it's like updating the price of, I don't know, an apple, and adding a delete request to remove an apple from the database. Excellent. So I'll push this just up to GitHub so you guys can see. Oh goodness. Do. If that works. Yeah, cool. So you're able to find all that code I just wrote on this jasper.friend/Open Dev Workshop. And then just try working on these exercises for the next little bit. And there's people walking around, they'll have name tags on. If you have any questions, feel free to put your hand up, we'll come around and help you guys.
That's the only reason.
Yeah, because that's the purpose I can
Oh yeah.
Reply is like package maintenance, and reply is express just like quietly express.
Alright. The guy came in.
You just initialize a class browser. You use a browser. If you know some object. I like material more.
I don't know if we can do it term one because that new subcom needs to like merge it themselves and then make a feature. So term two, term three. Then like we wanna talk about this. They do like
I will try to finish that exercise.
I'll get it close. I think a lot of the engineers that are responses, they're very interesting company.
I'm wondering if the DB is
There are responses you can ask.
run it as a job type. Like here, you need a DB push.
What do you have any CSE?
The DB here is just running as an object type, like temporary storage in the rest.
Ah, yeah, right.
I'm wondering if Mongo here is viewing Mongo Express.
Yeah, he's like curious about it, but he definitely doesn't want any like major decisions. Maybe gonna want to say, I think no.
Temporary storage at JSON. After, is it something as a client or? So this one is like a small server for Mongo Express. Right, yeah, because you still bigger server for. What about the Mongo TX required?
So we haven't
Temporary one.
I think it's so popular. You get right on the
What about the transformer? Is it a temporary transformer for storage?
I was like curious about it, like, dude, I couldn't even get the waitlist, like the waitlist is. So it's like, Jesus. But apparently, there's still the lectures on YouTube and all the content is like accessible to people. So I just told Glenn to say, he just presented on the Discord.
Johnson file for the is like
Oh yeah, he said that too. He said most of the
permanent storage, but not permanent design before you connect to
The thing is, I don't really know when I'll be using it, like, in my job. Like, it's interesting, but it's like,
like a level of storage.
right. Really, I just wanted to force that. Probably start with React, and then everyone says React's gonna die. Like, every year, someone says, like, the new frameworks, but it never does. Yeah. I guess when something goes wrong, right now, it's like React and whatever backend they have. No, I think I've learned enough. React, so I'm gonna do that. But I need to find a big button because I keep reading like really hard reviews. Yeah, everyone says it's like, everyone who hasn't done it says it's like really hard. And everyone who has done it is like saying it's really hard. Maybe it's just like everyone who like says it's bad, keep picking up, is happy. It's stuck in like actually like, you know. Just like in 28,
Yeah, that's the thing running as a server. Promises is kind of like a trait of JavaScript, handling the async async operation. Async operation is because when you write the file, the speed to run the file is more slower than the thing running in the RAM. So async handles.
I'm definitely. I think it's like even for an user, I feel like it's so
you're right.
internal content. It's good to know, but not necessarily. What might not use it?
Column is just this one in a route path and has parameters.
Yeah, exactly.
When you try to access it, you can perhaps and then they from the path. But it's just like way to extract the parameters from the route path.
For me,
Parameters and this way columns run the name as a telling the express telling the route to get the value.
Struggling to find engineers. And next term, or next year, banking together is
Yeah, the name and the instructions.
I already have it. Like a miss. I thought it was never like limits. It's only like 50 software engineers, isn't it? It's called Display Up. It's one of the sources of CSESoc. It's like, it's just full stack. Because they're small company. They don't even have a UI UX team, so like the engineers need to do that. Which is like pretty
So is around your define.
I do plan display out internship in the summer, and then do part-time display out here. So I get like experience.
Oh, this one is a class.
Like level, because currently that's what
It's class.
you get to touch a lot. Company doesn't have power, so they just delegate.
Which one?
And then like
There's the same importing a file routes.
You know, so that was like that's the interview. It was like the first LeetCode, like one of those online assessments I've ever done.
I think this file is right in the main entry for
It is.
anything.
I think I would have find out. Because at the start, like, I didn't even know how to like make a dictionary in Python. Yeah. Yeah. What did they ask you for? You know, how you have to go in-person interview. Like side by side.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, like what did they make you make?
REST client.
So I can
Oh, is that it? Oh, it's very Oh. So like UI as well.
Yeah, update, yeah. Update request for and you need to specify identity for the item you want to update. So which is the identity, like the source file of the DB. Oh,
Okay, but alright. Yes. So then I can start by
DBC. Okay, see the DB. Okay, so the name is the identifier. So like this one, and then get the name, get the icon by the name. Yeah, and then update the icon.
Did Java because you're going to be using Java in the industry. It makes sense. Dude, I got not too that bad. Java is basically like when the name is equals to not bad C. Like, can this C Java is also I didn't do quite one like I didn't touch C for a year.
So the first thing we get is the name. Yeah, name. And then column price.
I didn't do the questions. I just read the questions and I was like, that seems correct. Yeah, that seems correct.
Common is right.
It is hard. It's like, what do you even get to?
Yeah, you
got full marks for this, right? That's crazy. Did you have to deal with it? You actually price, right?
Oh, you need to update first, like this one, DB push, and then
One
create a new object with the name and the price. Pushing. Yeah, we are updating the technology, so let's see the document. Let's see the document. Document to find the method inside the other operation that we have.
You have to make a chat to push this.
Yeah, maybe there's something on this method that we can use.
It's so boring. It's like
So you can search Express
that has no and then send that to the server. And then you can like ask the server to like bin like average and then get it. It's so Java is so much more fun. This is so fun. The third part is you have to make a UDG
Every single file has a JSON. So I created my JS code.
Anyway, I think your logic is one push
Yeah.
such
But then
item first, and then you update it. Yeah, maybe there's a teacher method. Also push maybe override all the things.
When the naming, I think some companies use C++ station names as well. But it's really similar to Java.
How do we extract the data? How do we extract value inside? Oh, I know. Okay, then this I dot price equal to that price. DB but you already found the index inside of DB. So So that index corresponds to the DB is the item. So yeah, we want to change the target. But this one is for mention, so still keep it. And then inside the just delete that. Not end. Inside, yeah, inside of this thing. Not add anything. Just DB.
Oh, we change price?
Yes. Yeah. And then price.
Yeah, but like, what if we want to change the name to it?
Change the name.
How would we do that?
Oh, but you look for items from a name, you never couldn't change the name.
Oh, yeah. And then we do rest of the
Not send. We want to update the JSON file, and then use the FSY.
Inside into string of
And then we send update success.
When I open the second one will replace it. So I added the one.
Doesn't matter, you can send the thing that is
And
updated
now it's being
to tell the
company
this one. And then only semicolon.
I have 3 files here. I have 3 things. One is Java,
Yeah, Java. Yeah.
We extracted information from the network with different database. And the item object, the name, actually is what we change. And then we write it to
And then add another video.
The file, the folder.
We can put parameter after the delete item to say delete the item with the name of this parameter. We can after the function slash
that's what I did, but how
then
I only have one So when I do
And so we go to that path, and we want the values.
we want the parameter name.
yeah,
So we're going to look first, and if the database, the object we come up with equals to the name.
The name is random params.
So if it matches the name that we get, we want to delete it.
We want to delete it.
Can we use space?
Search for the JSON of the knowledge delete.
What we could do is
I can't do, I have to
we could keep the index. We want to use space.
You can search on search JSON object. From JSON object. Remove JSON. Yeah, I think it's a. So how to remove item from one JSON object? Oh, it's DB dot remove. Maybe that's index. Oh, not Java. Java is Java. And a JavaScript tool, that's fine.
just we can use splice. So DB
Wait, I here
I
the index. Oh. The DB is the index and then I.
I is the next one. I is
Not sure. Let's see inside of maybe you just create to see.
So what given is that we can look at the array. So what's the array? Array is database, right? You do just splice. The index is there.
And then just navigate to it.
Is there a splice? Is that what? Is there a splice?
It should be JavaScript. JavaScript, right? So if we're in so I believe the index. Say we find a match for the second index, then we're going to remove the second index. That's and we're doing the rest of the arrays again. Once we delete it, we want to write this database, right?
Is this
This is too resource consuming. Maybe
But
you
actually,
can just repeat it.
say for example, I want to have the React just as a name too in the
I'm not sure that I can
Yeah,
use
it's not
index
to
on
modify.
somewhere else.
When I open this will be replaced. It will be replaced.
So delete it.
Oh, okay. That was my question. I didn't know.
Maybe the I is index.
We can open a new window using Command Shift N.
Oh.
Or
delete and then
like where you've selected these three, you can go back to that.
use that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where?
So back to there.
Just try it. Just try it.
Do we want to write it? We don't write it.
Oh yeah, true. Need to
Then go up and
need to write back the.
Yeah.
Oh, open this one. I should open this one. Yes, it's important to work together. Yes, I don't need to do one by one.
Same one. I think we even need to have just update the new time will be.
Is this workshop is temporary? Next time when I open creating a business, it won't be there unless I do it.
I think it's called Mike.
And then send it needs
It might not.
Sometimes
Sometimes but the folder will still be on this.
basically it's just a temporary access, right?
Let's try.
Unless configured like CSESoc server, every time I open it, it's there because configured
Should be the same.
for DSK.
Down is not. Down is not. NPM is not, sorry.
So if you go the folder will always be low. But if you get images, it might be inside.
Yeah, that's I did not know because when I started workshops, it's like
Oh, you need to go back to the engine. Maybe you can add the route to the side.
for now,
You need to add
the access
use the route. Oh, everything you access from the start is proliferated from the route start. Everything you access from the stock file is the child of the route stock.
Should we just keep going?
And anything that access is out the slash route.
Either as a
And what's the
Okay, excellent. Hey guys. So we'll just continue on. If I can have your attention, please. Hello? Okay, lovely. So now we're going to work on the second part of it, which is adding in MongoDB to the Express backend. So what we were using so far was just that like db.json file as our database, but now we want to add in that like MongoDB connection. So first off, we're going to want to go to mongodb.com and log in. I'll sign in. I sign in with Google, if that works, if it wants to work. There we go. View all projects. So once you've signed in, you should see a screen similar once it loads. Come on. Yeah, you should see one similar to this. Just projects, yours will probably be empty. Made this one earlier, but we've created a new project just called Open Dev Workshop. Cool. And I'll be the project owner for that one. Lovely. Now we have the database deployments inside our Open Dev Workshop. So we're going to want to build a database and choose the free one. This is our shared cluster that we're making. Everything can just stay as normal, all the default stuff, and we'll have create cluster. Username and password, I'll just use Jasper and password. And then IP address, add your current IP. I think you just, add current IP. Lovely. Create user there. 2 week, what? It's ridiculous. Jasper 123, how about that? Perfect, good stuff. Cool, so we've created our IP address, all that fun stuff. Go to databases, probably don't need to save that. And we'll just wait for that to start connecting. Sorry, wait for that to like set up, and then we'll be able to connect to it and create our get our API to work with it. But while we're on the break, I added in this new file called db.js. If you pull from the GitHub repo, it should like pop up for you. But what this does is just manage our MongoDB connection. So we'll just walk through this. It imports the Mongo client from MongoDB, which is just what we use to like send requests or make requests, whatever kind of thing. But it's just like our user client for our own little API. The URL, we'll come back to the URL. This is what we're going to get from the MongoDB website once we've made our cluster. We've got our client, which is just creating a new client. We'll create these 2 new variables like DB connection and stock collection. So again, if we think of our like MongoDB as a kind of house, we've got the DB connection, which is a room, and then we've got the stock collection, which would just be a box inside that room. And then inside that, we'll have a documents like our apple or pear or banana. But so that's going to be like our pieces of paper. We also made this new function called connect to server. We've put this async keyword before it, just indicating to JavaScript that like you might need to execute something, then come back to it once it's done. And so we have this await client.connect. This is just what MongoDB has given us to connect to our client. And we can create a connection to our database just called mystore by doing client.db. Then we'll do a stock collection, and we'll like create our stock collection by doing dbconnection.collection stock. And you can see we're creating these layers to our database, right? We're making the room, then we're making the box, and soon we'll add some pieces of paper into the box. Then we'll add on an export so we can access it elsewhere. So have module to exports and connect to server, and we'll just pass that function. So we can call this in our index.js as we're like starting to listen on the port. We'll connect to the server as well. And then to get the database, we'll just return the database connection. And to get the stock collection, we'll just return the stock collection. Relatively simple. Cool. So inside our index, we will want to import db. So we go const db equals require db, ./db. And we'll also delete this db.json because we don't need that anymore. Delete that one. And so before we connect to our port and start listening for requests, we want to connect to the server. So we have to put in await db.connectServer, and again, that's the function we had earlier. And we have to put in await before it because, as you saw earlier, like it's an asynchronous function, and because we're using it in await, you have to add an async in front of this function kind of body, just to, again, tell JavaScript that you might come back to it later. Excellent. So we'll check back into our database. Hopefully that's done by now. Excellent, it is. Cluster 0, we'll go connect and connect your application. Then you'll see this URL, copy that back into VS Code. Sorry, can you guys all see that, or is that too zoomed out? Thumbs down, up, no? Okay, all good then. Cool, so copy that again. Back to our db.js, back up the top, URL, that's where we just paste that straight in there. And my password, Jasper123, very secure. Cool. Now we're going to try running that. npm run dev. Oh, perfect. So you saw there was a little wait there, and then we got the servers running on port 5000. So that's us waiting for MongoDB to get back to us saying, yep, connection's all good, you're connected, ready to go. Lovely. Cool, so that's all we need for connecting to our cluster. Now we want to convert some of our routes to use MongoDB. Because we're interacting with MongoDB over the internet, they will all need to be asynchronous requests. We'll leave this one for now, just as our little stock standard route. But inside name, we need to add an async before our before our callback function. And then we will want to grab that stock collection. Yeah, const stock collection, get the stock collection. Then we'll let items be equal to an empty list, and that item equal, oh sorry, we don't need that. Sorry, for this one, we're just going to find one item. So we have let item equals await stock collection dot find one. And to do a search in MongoDB, you pass in an object, and each of the keys in that object will be things that you search on, as in like name or price, and then the value for that is whatever you're searching for. So here we want to find something that matches name, so we'll pass in name, and we're hoping for something that matches our request parameter name. Hopefully that makes sense. Then once we get back that response, then we just want to send it back to the client. So response.send client. You can see it's even like simpler than doing our whole for loop. MongoDB handles a lot of like searching stuff for us and like collection, all that kind of thing. Cool. And if we try running that, it should come back empty. So we go to our stock apple, refresh it, and we get nothing back. But it didn't crash, which is a good sign. We just got no response because it's empty. That's okay. Cool. Now we want to try adding in an item. So again, we'll have to make this an asynchronous request. And it'll be simpler than writing to a file, which is always nice. So we'll just do another await and db.get stock collection. Grab that collection again, so grab our box, and then we want to insert our piece of paper into that box. Insert request.body. And then we want to send a response to the client saying success. Lovely. Just keep in mind, whenever you make a route, you always, sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier, but you always have to send a response, because otherwise whatever made the request is always just going to be waiting for a response. If you don't send anything, then it will just think that there's nothing to be received, and it will hang. Cool. Run this again. And we'll go back to our REST client. And again, add item. We can try adding in toothbrush as well. Try adding in toothbrush as we did last time. Send that. And 200. Okay, perfect. Good stuff. Another way we can inspect our data, we go back to our database deployment. We look into our cluster. We have a look at our collections in here. Sorry, I'll zoom in a little bit. Go to our collections, retrieving list of databases. we can see how we have this mystore.stock, and I have a toothbrush in there. This is a nice way to sanity check all of your data, and we can also see that there's an object ID. So very nicely, MongoDB gives us an object ID for everything it's inserted. You know that will be unique, and you can always use that for any kind of searches that you need. But you'll notice we didn't really do much like creating the database, creating the cluster. All it really was in our in our initialize function. Where is it? DB. There it is, DB connection. We're just creating our database, mystore, creating our collection, stock. You can have as many databases as you want, and as many collections as you want. Just remember that it goes database, collection, document. Cool. So that's it for adding things into the database and finding things. If we wanted to get this basic URL to instead return everything in the database, as in just find like the whole array of items in our collection, then one last thing, we'll convert to async and we'll let items equal this. Oh wait, sorry. Wait, db get stock collection dot find to array. So we'll step through this again. GitHub's Copilot's a little bit too good. But so let item await db dot get stock collection. Again, getting that collection, acting on it by doing a find similar to this one, but this time we'll find, so we're going to find everything. And because we've given it empty parameters, that just means find everything. If we gave it something like this, then apple. If we gave it that, then it's going to find any item in the database that matches apple and return that. But instead, we're just going to find everything in the database. Cool, so we find everything, convert it to an array, and then finally we respond with this. Ooh. npm run dev. Now if I try going back to our basic URL, which is just /stock, enter. Ooh, we get back our toothbrush and a price. If we want to add more things in, maybe add an apple for the same price. Send that, oopsies. Send that again. Add in a pear for the same price, just to see. Adds in a pear, these are all successes, lovely. And we refresh the page, and we can see we get an apple, we get a toothbrush, we get a pear. Excellent. So that was it for the MongoDB section. Hopefully that all kind of makes sense. I'll just switch back to the slides. A little bit more to go. But back to the last one.
So anything mentioned, it comes out like a recommendation. It's not exact search, but it's anything mentioned.
It is exact searching, yeah. Cool. So now I just want you guys to try and work on kind of MongoDB-ifying the routes you wrote earlier. So go to MongoDB, create an account, create a project, create a cluster inside that, pull down that db.js file from GitHub, have a look at the docs to find things like update one or remove or delete, and yeah, just try and make an update and a delete function, route with MongoDB. So yeah, give that a shot. Thanks. Good job, everyone.